Jeff, what do you think of my shelf? Harmon, move your head.
Yeah, it's about a, I don't know, 4 out of 10. It's mid. It's I was expecting, I'd heard so much about it. Quite frankly, underwhelmed by the shelf.
Wow. Okay. Thanks to Jeff Paterson for joining us today for the last time ever. I can't believe, Jeff, come on. What are you talking about? There's a light.
The underlight gets it to a 4.
Wow. Harm, take it away. I'll have to recover from that one.
J-Pat, besides being underwhelmed by Quad's shelf there, what stood out to you from last night's game about their victory and just the way they went about it?
Yeah, the start, obviously, scoring 21 seconds in, and then building on that, where, look, the Blackhawks are a bit of a wild card, right? Like, they don't care about the outcome. They're just out there to have some fun. I mean, they're trying to put something together, but they're a long way off. And so you saw that they're willing to take chances and trade chances the Canucks have finishing that the Blackhawks don't have. And so I like the fact that the Canucks were able to get the 1-0 lead and then build on it, get a 2-0 cushion, because then the Blackhawks chipped away. They made it 2-1. They made it 3-2, and the Canucks were able to continue to push. It was a crazy first period with that much offense. I like the fact that the power play scored early and then in a 4-2 game in the third period, put the hammer down. Like, we've been waiting to see that power play execution from the Canucks really since the first period of the first game against the Calgary Flames. So, yeah, I mean, I like that third line, the way that it's going right now. I like, obviously, Kevin Lankinen continues to deliver and perform. Should note that they skated in their blacks here today, and he doesn't have black equipment. Quadrelli put me, I got a text at like 4 this morning or something. Does Lankinen have black gear? And I was like, all right, they're not practicing until one day. We'll get to it. But I asked, and it is on order. They're hoping it's here by Saturday, but the stuff that he's got seems to be working for him right now. So if he has to play in white and blue and green gear, it may look a little funny, but he's doing all right. So, yeah, I mean, there's lots to like. They've settled into this thing. 1 regulation loss in 6 games now. When you think of where the angst was after the loss in Tampa, rattled off 3 straight victories, the 6 games in, 1 regulation loss, and still really very little in the grand scheme from Petey and Jake DeBrusk. So I think you can spin that as a positive. Those guys are going to score eventually, but they've been able to do what they've done here without an awful lot in the way of contributions from them. So I really like the production from lower in the lineup, and it's kind of sustained this group through this road trip.
You mentioned the couple goals from the power play. They debuted a bit of a new look. Connor Garland on that top unit now, plus just guys in different spots. JT Miller on that right flank instead of the left one. Petey sort of spending more time in and around the bumper, occasionally interchanging with Besser at the net front. What did you make of the new look power play beyond just the 2 goals they scored?
Yeah, I mean, I think context matters here. It's the Blackhawks, and they're not a very good team. And really, neither are the Philadelphia Flyers, even though they beat the Canucks in a shootout, but then the Canucks turned the table. So I always caution that there are much better teams in the National Hockey League. The Canucks really haven't seen many of them in the early going. That doesn't take away from what the Canucks have accomplished. You can only play the teams that are on the schedule, but they're going to start to get a steady diet here with Pittsburgh and Carolina and New Jersey. And I think we'll get a better sense of some of these changes and some of these looks and the depth of this hockey club. And, can they be exposed and will they be exposed? But the Blackhawks were the opponent last night, and they did what they had to do to beat them 6-3. I think I've said this to you guys really since training camp. Like, I still want to see Elias Pettersson shoot the puck more. And unless there's a reason why he's not shooting the puck, and I know everybody will point to the wrist. I mean, that's always the sort of default. Well, if he's not shooting the puck, it's got to be the wrist. He has 9 shots through 6 games. I looked this up last night. He had 10 shots by himself in a win in St. Louis 18 months ago. 10 shots on goal himself. He got 9 through 6 games. So, like, if he's healthy, we know that shot, I'm not saying that they have to focus on the shot, but that shot is a weapon. He can score from distance. He can cause rebounds and deflections and whatever. It just still feels like he's a bit of a forgotten man on the power play. So I would like to see him get a little more involved, get the puck on his stick and let it fly. But in saying that, I think last night was another small step in the right direction. That line played well. He's picking up points. He's got points in back-to-back games now. So, you can't say that he's not contributing. But we're all still waiting for the big loud game from Elias Pettersson, and that's just something that we haven't seen through the first 6 outings this season.
It's funny you actually mentioned that, Jeff, because just in my game notes that I was writing, I had noted that early in the game it would have made it 2-0. It was their first or second shift of the game. Paterson gets a chance and then slides it to Nils Höglander, who really had a tap in, and then Peter Mrazek made a miraculous kick save, and that's what's going to get the highlight is, oh, it was a great save. But like in my head, I also thought, just shoot. Like, just shoot in that situation. And again, you're going for the tap and pass. I get it, but I agree with you, Jeff. I would like to see him shoot the puck a little bit more.
I love the fact, though, that he took on Connor Murphy, and I know it's Connor Murphy, but it's the guy that was right there in front of him, tried to take him on one-on-one, and Murphy, his only recourse was to take a penalty, and that led to the power play goal that really, put the hammer down in the hockey game. So if you back it up, I mean, there are contributions there from him. Guys, I should mention that, like, the Canucks practiced here at 1 o'clock. Some of the staffers that I talked to that were on the road trip said they got through the front door at 3 a.m., and the Canucks were back on the practice ice here today. I think they're getting a day off tomorrow. So I was a little surprised that there was a full practice. It was a spirited practice to the point that Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, and I don't want to overblow this, so please, I'm saying that, but the two of them get into a little like chopping match after a drill, pretty standard drill, and the temperature rose and a couple of slashes. And then JT with a pretty good cross check and a little bit of a verbal exchange between the two. So here's a team that's won 3 in a row. Things seem to be going pretty well, but I think it was more just the heat of the battle than anything else. But it was notable. I mean, people, the media guys that were here watching, we all kind of looked and thought, all right, like it was something. And maybe it's just again the competitive nature. And I think Rick Tocchet likes that kind of stuff. Like he wants to see his leaders lead by example. And if they're setting the tone with intensity at practice, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But, from an otherwise pretty mundane practice that Quinn Hughes got the day off for maintenance. And when I say maintenance, I think it's just the amount that he played. And you guys documented how well he played. I don't think there's any reason for concern here. Captain, a little bit of a captain's privilege. He got the day off. The rest of them practiced, and away we go.
Yeah, he's just been phenomenal. Like that's what we started the show with, Jeff. Just Quinn Hughes has been so good. He was so good last night. I guess it's not even a question. Go ahead, Harm.
Well, I was also going to add, I guess the PD Miller thing, I guess that's what happens when they have to practice a little bit sleep deprived. But yeah, I was pretty surprised. I figured they would have the day off today and practice tomorrow instead. But I'm sure there was a reason or a thought behind that, maybe related to building availability and whatnot. But to shift gears a little bit, the third line with Sherwood and Blueger, that seems really important, not just from a standpoint of them getting production further down the lineup, but also if you were going to move Höglander and Garland up the lineup, to know that, okay, you can have some of your best wingers in your top six and not worry that your bottom six is going to completely fall off the map. How vital have their contributions been? And what are you seeing as far as why they're having some success?
Yeah, I got to give Teddy Blueger his props here. I was one of these guys that thought he would be the fourth line center. And in fact, I banged that drum pretty loudly that P.S. Suter should be given the opportunity to be the third line center starting training camp. Now things happen and, it's a fluid situation and Suter's been pretty quiet. And Teddy Blueger has just solidly delivered. We saw it for a pretty good stretch last year with Garland and Joshua. And it kind of feels like we're back in that place now, but with two different wingers in Danton Heinen and Kiefer Sherwood. Sherwood's been terrific. The hits, that's kind of taking on a life of its own. I had a good chance to talk to him about it today. Even he was laughing and he's like, there's a puck out there too, right? Recognizing that it's not just about the hits. Because I asked him, like, is there a danger of falling into the trap of chasing hits? Like, does it become this idea where I'm on top of the league, I want to stay there, and now you get drawn out of position and you're running around? And he said, like, no, I'm aware of that and I've seen that before, but he's pretty quick to point out that the puck remains the focal point. But I just, Teddy Blueger is just really responsible, and it doesn't have huge offensive chops, but there's enough there for him to hold down the center spot on that third line. Sherwood's got great speed. Obviously, the tenacity is now coming to the fore where he's not missing an opportunity. And to rack up 31 hits in 3 games, all in visiting buildings, like, that's an accomplishment. Sometimes we accuse guys of getting home cooking and some love from the home scoreboard or the home stats counters. This was out on the road. This was 3 different road buildings, and he goes 10, 9, and 12 last night. So he outdid himself there. And then Danton Heinen, it had been a bit of a quiet start for him. I mean, there'd been some other areas, penalty kill, that he'd been able to contribute, but last night to get his first two, and to get one that early in the hockey game, I think gets everybody involved. And I love that first goal. Like, I just love everything about that sequence. Phil Hronek, nice play to keep it into the line, gets it down. And I know the three of them, and there's a bunch of stills out there where, like, Sherwood looked like he had a great chance to shoot. He elects to pass to Blueger, got half the net wide open. He passes it back to Heinen. Like, it felt like all of them could have scored that opening goal, and eventually it wound up on the stick of Danton Heinen. So, I'm sure Heinen didn't want to go a whole lot longer without getting his first. And then, as it turned out, he went 10 minutes and he has his second, and almost had a hat trick as the night unfolded. So, yeah, I mean, they all bring a little bit of something different, but collectively it adds up to a pretty stout looking third line that I think the Canucks would be happy to roll with for quite a while. And then, of course, Dakota Joshua might cloud that whenever he gets the green light to get back in another day in a non-contact jersey, but another day that he's on the ice with his teammates here at Rogers Arena.
Jeff, just before we close out, let's just talk about Joshua returning. We saw the report, 1 to 2 weeks, it looks like, before he was able to return. What do the Canucks do when he's actually ready to return, in your mind? Like, where does he slot in this lineup?
They've just turned the lights out on me here at the Raj, so I hope I'm okay. Oh, the lights are back on. There we go.
Oh, they're watching the show.
Yeah. Let me first say, this is the first time that I've seen Dakota Joshua with my own eyes. I've seen a little bit of video of him out on the road. A week seems premature to me. He's still in a non-contact jersey. That means he hasn't taken contact. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You have to be able to absorb some punishment. It's a physical game, and that's the style of game that he plays. So he's got to get out of the non-contact jersey. I would think then he would need a couple of practices where he's fully involved and absorbing contact and giving as much as he's taking. And then it's getting the skating legs up as well. Like, the Canucks have played 6 games. So, just everybody in the league has now played 6 or 7 or 8 games. By the time he gets back, I think most teams will be at probably the 10-game mark. They've had a training camp, preseason, and 10 games of NHL speed, and he's got to catch up to that and jump on midstream. That's not easy. Now, remember last year, struggled out of the gate, was a healthy scratch in that 10-1 win in San Jose in early November. He didn't get off to a great start last year and then caught fire. So, it wasn't an injury last year. It was sort of ineffectiveness and conditioning, perhaps. Different circumstances, obviously, but he showed last year that he could ramp things up in season, and I think he's going to have to draw on that. And then where do you put him? Like, with all due respect to Danton Heinen last night, I still like Blueger with Joshua on one side and Sherwood on the other. Like, I kind of like the looks and the sounds of that as a third line. And, again, let's see where this team is. Knock on wood for their sake that everybody is healthy and that, there are difficult decisions to make for the coaching staff. But that's one thing that you can't get ahead of yourselves. We can speculate and we can look at depth charts and all those types of things. But as he gets closer to returning, somebody else may be out of the lineup. So it really is hard to know how they're going to slot him in. First steps is just continuing to skate, get the conditioning, get the legs up, and then get out of that non-contact jersey. And once he does that, I think then we'll have a better sense of what the coaching staff's thinking about where they're going to slot him in.
Sorry, we're going to wrap it up, but one last one. And I don't trust your judgment per se after the shelf comment, but Daniel Sprong, when do you think he's going to get back in the lineup, Jeff? It feels weird that he wasn't in last night.
Speaking of guys on the shelf quads, yeah, and he was the extra body here as they ran through line rushes. It was the same line combinations last night. I mean, the only piece that's missing was Quinn Hughes. So the forward groups were the same as they were last night, and that gave the appearance that Daniel Sprong. Now, it's the day after Tuesday win, Wednesday practice. They don't play till Saturday, so things can change in the eyes of the coaching staff. But look, this guy was brought in to score, and we thought play higher in the lineup. He's appeared in 3 games and been a healthy scratch 3 times as well. And they're electing to play Archie Bains and Nils Amon over him. It's early, but it's something. There's a story there as far as where does it go? Like, we saw what happened with Andrei Kuzmenko last year with Rick Tocchet, and ultimately Kuzmenko was shipped out of town. I'm not suggesting 6 games in that Daniel Sprong won't last the season here, but clearly it hasn't started the way that he had hoped, nor the hockey club. The investment obviously less in Sprong than it was in Kuzmenko after they'd given him the contract extension, but still, this is a guy that was brought in to be a one-shot shooter. He scores the first goal of the season, and that's his only offensive contribution to this point. So it's a little curious, and we'll see. It's hard to work your way back into the good graces of the coaching staff if you're an extra in practice. And I guess when that time comes and he gets another opportunity, he's going to have to find a way to elevate his game and get to a point where he puts in a kind of performance that doesn't allow them to take him out of the lineup. But it just feels like there's a lot of ground to cover between now and then. And for the time being, appears that Daniel Sprong is still on the outside looking in when it comes to a spot in the lineup for the Vancouver Canucks.
Jeff, thanks for this. Much appreciated taking the time from the rink. Looking forward to reading what you come up with from the rink.
Also always here for quad slander.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah, I may have been a little harsh on the shelf. I may revisit my review on the shelf, but I wasn't blown away. Let's just leave it at that.
Gotta get a bigger shelf. That's all right. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
There he is, Jeff Paterson, who you can catch after every game on Rink Wide Vancouver.